Well, Kamala Harris flubs yet another interview with NBC this time when asked, why is it that, or ask what's Joe Biden actually like? Is he in decline? And she says, no, he's more than capable of being president. She got to watch him and see what it was like. Joe Biden is incredibly accomplished, experienced, and capable in every way, and that anyone would want if they're president. When asked, if she saw anything happened like what we saw with that debate between Biden and Trump, she said, behind closed doors, she said, "No, it's just a bad debate." So once again, they deny Joe Biden's in cognitive decline. They've never really given us a real answer why he's not the one running. And even though he was the overwhelming choice for president when it came to primaries, doesn't matter. They don't have to give you an answer. They never will. So you have that going on. Elections is weeks away, and it seems like things may be slipping away in a direction that is not favoring Kamala Harris. And you may start to see the panic, which is kind of what I get when I look at, major Democrat names like Barack Obama, for instance. I feel like he's on the panic tour there, going around trying to, we saw it last week with the whole ordeal. He was, disparaging black men for not wanting to vote for a woman. And, it's just been, it's not pretty. And then he's out there talking about, what caused this division in America? And it's like, really, dude, you want to know when that started? You should take a big look in the mirror. So you got that going on. So Fani Willis, Nathan Wade, who was, tasked with being the special prosecutor in the Georgia election interference case, was, summoned to Congress, gave statements that have been released to the public. He actually met with the Biden administration a couple of times, at least 2 times, that it looks like, according to what I've read, and can't recall what the meetings were about, even though he met with them for over 8 hours. You have, Kamala Harris is over there just, shaking her head at those evil rich people, those billionaires. But you know what? Guess where most of her funding comes from? It's got that story. And then we got George Soros taking over taking over a lot of the radio stations in the United States of America after Odyssey, the radio, the broadcasting company. They have an app, kind of a crappy app. If you've ever used it, it's not very good, but they have that. It's really like what I've known them from, but they own a lot of radio stations, and a George Soros funded nonprofit has taken over control of those radio stations. So we got all that in store. So let's get to it. All right. So like I said, to start this whole thing off, she bombed another interview, which, what is that? How many does that make now? All of them? 60 Minutes was a disaster, had to be edited and pieced together to make it acceptable for public viewing. You have what happened with Fox News. You have this. I'm gonna shut this shade here 1 second. There we go. Trying to hide my grill in the background there. Something better. Kind of a dreary, overcast day here in Michigan. Feels like fall. It's cooling off. Do have the window open because it feels nice. I like the cold sometimes. Winter, I don't do. I do it. I have to do it, but I don't like it. If it was up to me, I would skip it. Winter for like Christmas time is okay, snow, etc. But after that, done. like February, January, February, March, probably about till May. It's just I hate that time of year. And all right, so I will play the clip for you here. This is from Breitbart. This is just a snippet of what happened with this interview. Here, let me put my headphones on. Let's go for it.
Can you say that you were honest with the American people about what you saw in those moments with President Biden as you were with him again and again, repeatedly in that time?
Of course. Joe Biden is an extremely accomplished, experienced, and capable in every way that anyone would want if they're president.
And you never saw anything like what happened at the debate night behind closed doors with him?
It was a bad debate. People have bad debates. He is absolutely...
But that's the reason why you're here, and he's not running for the top of the ticket.
Well, you'd have to ask him if that's the only reason why.
What do you think?
I am running for president of the United States. Joe Biden is not. And my presidency will be about bringing a new generation of leadership to America that is focused on the work that we need to do to invest in the ambitions and aspirations of the American people.
It's a judgment question. That's why I ask. Can the American people trust you in these moments, even when it's maybe uncomfortable for Americans to level with Americans in that way? So that's why I ask. And it sounds like what you're saying is you feel like you never saw anything like that from President Biden.
I have worked with Joe Biden, hours and hours and hours over these 4 years, whether it be in the Situation Room or the Oval Office. Joe Biden is the one who was able to bring NATO together during a crisis where, for the first time in 70 years, Europe saw and has seen war. Joe Biden has done the work that has been about being a leader on what we have done to fix so much of what has been broken in terms of the economy because of Donald Trump's mismanagement. I speak with not only sincerity, but with a real firsthand account of watching him do this work. I have no reluctance to say
I'm sure that's what happened.
No, of course.
I'm sure you watched him work so hard. It's probably after his, 800th vacation day as president of the United States. He might have came in and did a couple hours of work. But, so let's just go through the points here. She's essentially claiming the reason why Joe Biden is not the nominee is because he had a bad debate performance against Donald Trump. That was it. That was the only reason why. And if you really want to know why, you need to ask him. Well, the interviewer there says, why are you here then if that's the only reason why? Well, you should just ask Biden. Really? That's the best you got, huh? When asked the question, she said, well, I'm running for president. I'm going to be a different president than Joe Biden. I'm running. And once again, another non-answer. And then we need to bring in a new generation of leadership. To open opportunities for people that need them. It's another common talking point from the Kamala Harris camp. We hear a lot about an opportunity economy, not a whole lot about what the hell that even is. She claimed she never saw anything. And she saw Biden bring NATO together during the first war in Europe, 70 years. And he fixed the economy. He had to fix the economy that Donald Trump destroyed. It's amazing to me that people are going to vote for this person, and there's going to be a lot of people that show up to do it. I get it if you're a diehard Democrat and a never Trumper type and all that stuff. I don't know. I guess that's the only reason why you're going to do it. It's because you can't handle Donald Trump being president. That's it. You don't care about the economy. You don't care about, the wars. You don't care about the divisiveness in this country, the division in this country. You don't care about these. You don't care about anything. You care about Trump not winning. But just for the record, once you elect this person who's seems to, comes across as pretty mediocre, they're going to be president for 4 years. And it's going to be a continuation of the last 4 years. And I don't know about you, but seems to be hurting pretty bad right now financially. There's not a whole lot out there for work that's worth paying you. Worth working. There's not really any way to afford food right now unless you have a very good paying job. Affording gas is, out of the question basically. If you're not even like, let's say, middle class, the lower end of middle class, I mean, this is unsustainable, this lifestyle. So you have to really wonder, like, do people listening to this really think that her and Biden, the economy is so bad because it was so bad before them, they came in and fixed the whole thing? That's just absurd. There's no factual evidence there to support this idea that the economy was bad when they inherited it. Things got progressively worse while they were in office. So, that gradual destruction of the economy, it was born by issues too, like what happened in Russia. And she's claiming that Joe Biden brought NATO together to deal with the problem. Well, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but the reason why this really got pushed into a full-blown conflict was because of NATO expansion. So good job. You had NATO pressing on Russia's border, essentially, and then when the war breaks out, you bring them all together as one big happy family. I'm sorry, I'm sure if you say that, you're automatically a Putin supporter or whatever. That was always the talking point after. But it's a disaster. The whole thing is a disaster. The candidacy is a disaster. The presidency is going to be a disaster. The vice president has been a disaster. Like, there's nothing here that should give you any hope or any idea that she's going to be a good president. Don't you think that by now that they would have some sort of answer for this? Even if they just sit down and type something up or write something out, and then you memorize it, and it's like, okay, when you sit down and they ask you these questions, here's what you say. It's like, taking this off. There's just no damage control with this campaign. They just don't have answers for anything, and they will answer everything with a non-answer. And why is that? Is there some idea here where it's like, is there some idea here where it's like, we know she's more than capable of handling this on her own, but then when she shows up to handle it, she just can't? There's no way you think that. I mean, they can clearly see. So I just think maybe they're kind of inept in a way. Especially if you noticed, trying to like shine the light on my face a little bit. I remember there being an ordeal with the last presidential election where it was like the Democrats seemed to be so much better at garnering support, so much better at playing the game. They were all about the ballot harvesting and all that stuff, and they were really good at getting funding and donations. And it sure seems like this time around, sorry, I'm like cooking here. Sure seems like this time around, they are, the Republican side is doing much better at this. This could be because of the tactic of they switched candidates so late into the process. But, it just seems to me like the Democrats are panicking really bad right now. They're like in full-blown desperation mode because they don't have anything to offer aside from Donald Trump is bad So I'm going to go ahead and just continue to pound that into your heads. And the only reason why you don't support us is because you're willing to support a bad person and a bad candidate. Because you're a bad person. If you want to be a good person, you should support us. And that's the mentality. Honestly, like that just seems like that's the route they're going with. And that's why a lot of times you hear Harris and they'll ask her a question, she'll feel cornered, and then she'll go, but Donald Trump. Because he's so bad and so evil, and you think anybody that could support him is that way. I don't know what. You can kind of sense it. There's something different going on right now when it comes to their mentality and the way they seem like they're kind of panicking, especially as the polls move away, because she is really sitting down to do every interview she can right now, and each time she does, it's been worse and worse. It's not looking good. This time you got the efforts going on in like Pennsylvania for the Republicans, where they're actually garnering support. Elon Musk is out there, doing what he can. You got Scott Preslow out there doing what they can to flip the state, and there is a very good chance if she does not win Pennsylvania, there's a good chance that she'll have no chance to win the presidency if she doesn't get Pennsylvania. So it seems like a whole different mindset. I think this is what happens when you have more nuanced support for the Republican side, not necessarily what it's been like in the past. Now you got Elon Musk and RFK, and then you got, I know Joe Rogan's not a Trump supporter, but apparently he's going to have Trump on his podcast. Trump's been doing the podcast circuit now for a while. Like, things are different than they were ever before. And that's because the traditional way we've done things are slowly dwindling away. The mainstream media, I keep calling it the mainstream media because I shouldn't call it that. Corporate media, trying to get away from the mentality that they are the mainstream media. Corporate media, they are becoming more and more relevant by the day, which could be why you see them pressing her a little bit more this time around, lately, because they're just tarnishing their reputation further by coddling this candidate and helping her along. But they honestly expect you to think that Joe Biden is perfectly capable. He was the candidate that was selected to run by the voters through your democratically, through your democratic process. Unlike her, and they're out there always just scolding you about the idea of, if you're conservative or a right wing, or you're anti-democracy, you're anti-democratic. Meanwhile, there's no democracy involved at all with putting her in place. But they're out there, talking about that. But we don't really know why Joe Biden stepped down. Even though he was democratically chosen, we pushed him out. Not only that, we took the money that was raised to put him in office again, and we just decided to give it to somebody else. And then the media drums up support for her. It's fake. They come up with this phenomenon. There's a major rise in support for her, even though she's been one of the most unpopular vice presidents in U.S. history. And she still has a very low approval rating. If you look at it, they decided to go with that. And then people bought in real quick. Like, this is something great. This is some phenomenon. This is the nail in the coffin for the Republicans. That died down even after the debate, where many people say she won because she got into his head. She knew exactly what to do to press his buttons. That's why she wants another one. And here you are. You're out here. You're at this point now where you're being asked, why is Joe Biden not the candidate if he's with it, if he's so, he's still, sharp as a tack, right? He's still, behind closed doors, he's just great. He's one of the most accomplished presidents we've ever had, one of the most accomplished leaders we've ever had. We draw on his experience for everything. If you have that really going on behind closed doors, then please tell us why he's not the candidate. Bad debate. And the reason why they're not telling you is because they know if they have to admit why he's not the candidate anymore, then they're going to have to admit that he's not with it. He's cognitively impaired to the point where he can't be president anymore. That's the problem. They can't admit that openly without having him, just whisking him away. They would lose the presidency. They would just put her in place. But my guess is they really want to run on what the mystery is, that is Kamala Harris. We don't know what she's going to be like as a president. They don't want to give you a preview. They don't want to watch that transition of power, during the presidency, because they could be like, well, then they are just the same. It would be only a few months, but so they could replace him after the election, but I doubt it. I mean, they're just going to ignore his existence. And if Trump gets elected, who knows what the hell's going to happen, but it could get ugly. So there you have it. There she is once again, just flat out denying that Joe Biden is impaired. This was an interesting story. It was in my Substack today, which actually just went out a little bit ago. If you want to check that out, I'll put the link in the description here. But Fani Willis, who is the one prosecuting Trump for the election interference thing in Georgia, had actually been kind of seeking out a special prosecutor before she was even in office. Then, of course, the story goes, she picked Nathan Wade, and as Wade tells it, he was kind of the last man standing because nobody else was really on board with doing it. He said he reluctantly took the job. And what ended up coming to fruition during this whole thing is he was having a romantic relationship with Willis and a financial relationship with her. Her office had paid him $650,000. She was reimbursing him for work he had done on this case. And so come 2022, he met with Biden's administration. So he had invoiced her for a visit with White House, with the administrative staff in May of 2022, and claims they met for 8 hours, and he doesn't remember what they talked about. And then once again, they met in November of 2022. This time, it just says meeting with DC slash, it's like meeting with DC slash White House or something like that. And let's see here. Yeah, so they that one, there's no proof he ever went to the White House, but it doesn't really specify where he went. There's no, he invoiced her for it. There's no visitor logs to the White House or anything about this whole thing. But of course, they openly admit, yep, I was meeting with Biden's administration about this whole thing, but I just don't remember what they were talking about. You don't remember what was said in an 8-hour-long meeting with the White House. It seems like something that would be very memorable to me. If I'm just a normal guy going about my day and I have to have a meeting, I have to meet with presidential staff to talk about whatever for 8 hours, I would remember what we talked about, because it's not like he met with them any other time. And I don't think that some guy this special prosecutor from Georgia would just randomly have meetings with the White House at any other point in his career. That should be a pretty big mark in your memory. But he doesn't remember. That should tell you everything you need to know about this. Now, is there anybody out there, I mean, aside from people that probably suffer from TDS, or people who are just completely cut off from the news cycle, or maybe people that are in denial or whatever, but is there anybody really out there that believes that most of the cases against Trump have been, is there anybody out there that believes that they are not just flat out weaponization of government? Because there's been nothing's come to fruition about this yet. And I know there's that whole thing that happened with Jack, was that guy's Jack Smith or whatever, where they released the redacted evidence, which was, I think it was like 1,900 pages or something of redacted crap. That's still ongoing, but most of these other cases have just been kind of bunk for when it came to the whole the case in New York, where they got him on fraud or whatever. They busted him for something that everybody does already. And the whole thing with the sexual encounter, they let her bring a suit forth after the statute of limitations had expired. And despite his claims to the contrary, there's just so many things that's like you can't look at this and say that there's legitimacy to most of this stuff. But I'm sure that if you're a anti-Trumper, you're going to look at this and freak out. That's not true. He's a felon. He's a 34-time felon. How about that? The 34-time felon. Right, because there's totally not an incentive there to make that the case. They have every incentive to slap that label on him. It was interesting. I'll show you the thing here. It's it's not interesting. It's really dumb actually, but it's just funny how many times have you heard that they're going to come up with this thing that's going to ruin him. It's going to ruin Trump forever. It's going to destroy his campaign. Well, I have let's see here. Where did it go? I have a tweet for you. Oh boy. Breaking news. Bill Gates just contributed more than $50 million to organizations supporting Kamala Harris. This is huge. But you know what? Trump wants to just help his rich friends. He just wants to, he's supported by billionaires. Yep, because Bill Gates is just one of them progressives. Just like the rest of the people that donate to Kamala Harris. So here's another stupid thing. This is from an account called Republicans Against Trump. I'm sure these people are really Republicans. Here you go, ready? Whoa. Somebody sound like their car about done blowed up, right? Okay, here we go. Oops, already got this up. Now.
These last 2 weeks are going to be filled with things like this. And I can tell you, without going into detail, that I've been pitched a story about Donald Trump now for about a week, that if true, would end his campaign.
Oh.
And there's all sorts of things like that flying around. I'm not the only one who's been pitched.
Really? What a reputable show called Two-Way Tonight. Whatever the hell that is. And this guy here, journalist Mark Halperin, says that there's a story that come out that could end his campaign. It's weird how what hasn't ended his campaign so far? Let's see. Him being a racist, a sexist, a homophobe, a transphobe, a Nazi, a fascist, a Russian spy, an insurrectionist, Hitler. I saw an article from the Atlantic that called him Hitler, Mussolini, and Stalin. He's, a felon. You go down the list. They have been trying to bring this guy down since the day he became a candidate. And they have pulled everything out. They've even weaponized the Department of Justice against him. They have made up new legal theories so they could go after him. They impeached him as president. They tried impeaching him when he wasn't president. They tried to take away his presidential immunity. I mean, you go on and on and on, and all the things they've done. Oh, this is funny. This post here, but all these things that go on and on and on. But this guy's got the final knife. This guy's got the knife. He's got the final knife that's gonna do him in forever. He's got the final nail. It's gonna put the nail in the coffin on Trump's campaign. So you have this post here from The Atlantic from Kamala HQ. Trump quotes, "I need the kind of generals that Hitler had." Does anybody believe this stuff anymore? I'm not talking about like liberals that live in Looney Tune made up fantasy world where they want this to be true. They want this to be something to get outraged about. But does anybody believe that he actually said that? It's from The Atlantic. Okay. I'm pretty sure isn't that the same publication that claimed that he called veterans or dead soldiers suckers and losers or whatever. I mean, and it's like, oh, this will a source of a source said so, and I was there, I heard it. Nobody else did, but I heard it. It's like the Hitler thing. It's not going to resonate anymore. It's just like you guys have beat that horse to death to the point where it's just like meaningless to people. Of course, you have to compare your plight to someone living under the Nazis because you've had to deal with Donald Trump. He's pissed you off so bad. Someday we'll write a book about you and how awful it was living under the fascist that was Trump. But there you have it. Let's keep up the lies. But maybe that's the article that's going to ruin Trump forever. Maybe he said that. Oh man, he's done. It's done. Weeks before the election. It's crazy how they wait until now to have a story, considering that they've been trying to bring him down since 2016. They have done everything they can. They've scoured every corner of his life. They've gone through his, all his business records. They've gone through his classified documents. They've done everything they can to go after this guy, to no avail. But a couple of weeks before the election, they finally found the thing. And that X account is tweeting it like, "Oh yes, we finally have the thing." So, but all of this, it just shows you, that. But when it goes back to the story with about Wade and that whole prosecution, the Biden administration has been at the helm this entire time. It doesn't shock me. I mean, there's also another story of the Biden administration contacting the National Archives, using the FBI contacting the archives about getting some special permission to view sealed documents that have been, classified by Donald Trump. And guess what? The National Archivists, you'll never guess what they did. They gave in. They let the FBI scour the records. It's a joke. We live in a time. There is an agenda beyond agendas right now. And I'm telling you, we got that progressive agenda on the move. If you don't believe me, I don't know what to tell you, but there is enough receipts out there to show otherwise. For example, this. So George Soros, in case you're not aware of who he is one of the ultimate progressive donors. and he always supports Democrats. And he is very pro-censorship. And he has spent, large portions of his fortune trying to infiltrate American society and trying to shape it in his progressive image. And this is a story about George Soros has been granted the right to purchase the broadcasting licenses of over 200 radio stations that have been previously owned by Odyssey. He's doing so through a company called, a nonprofit organization called Fund for Policy Reform. And this was back in June when this first started to roll out. And there's a rule, according to the FCC, that a broadcasting license, 25% of a broadcasting license cannot be owned, or anything more than 25% of a broadcasting license cannot be owned by a foreign entity. So they figured out a way to doctor it so that way Soros could still buy the license and they wouldn't have to do a review about it. Amazing how that works. How the FCC just kind of said, we'll fast track it for you. Because normally if they were going to do a review, apparently it can take up to 6 months. You have to do a review on any foreign purchasers because they want to, vet them, make sure they're not terrorists, or make sure they're not, meddling in things that they're not supposed to, which one would think you should see George Soros purchasing that. And in 2 seconds, you should go, this guy's meddling in something. But, oh well. So his son, Alex Soros, is on the board of this Fund for Policy Reform, and other people on the board of trustees is Soros spokesman Michael Vachon, attorney Marianne Canfield at Soros Fund Management, and Leonard Bernardo, a top staffer for the Soros-backed Open Society Foundation's philanthropy empire. Apparently, he bought up $400 million of Odyssey's debt. And in case you're not aware what Odyssey is, it is a company that owned broadcasting licenses for, many radio stations in the United States. It was one of the biggest at one time, next to the iHeart Media Group, I think. One of those. You remember there was the iHeart Radio app. It's whoever owns that. They're the biggest. Odyssey is the second largest. And you probably listen, if you listen to radio at all. I sometimes listen to sports radio during football season, and like on my way to driving kids to school and stuff. And one of those stations I listen to, or I guess the only one that I listen to, is owned by Odyssey. And Odyssey has an app where you can go back and watch your favorite radio shows, and you can kind of pick different segments to watch. It's a good idea, but the app is terrible. It's a really terrible app. It's one of the worst streaming apps I've ever seen. It's always bugging out and bogging down. And so what they tried to do was, after podcasts exploded and traditional radio kind of went out the door, they tried to get into a more modern version of their media space by having people do podcasts and stuff that worked for the networks. So if you listen to some of these sports talk stations, like every sports talk person you'll listen to has their own podcast for this, that, and the other thing. It was a way to try to modernize it, but apparently it didn't catch on because Odyssey it went belly up. And while they're not allowed, iHeartMedia is the company that's the biggest one. But so in order to bypass the 25% rule, they let Odyssey issue a lot of their debt to Soros in some special type of bond or something, and then they ended up basically getting around it. And the FCC said that they wouldn't vet Soros before selling him the broadcast license, they would do it after. And even Odyssey said, like, oh, well, we'll submit to a foreign or a review. And they're like, yeah, don't worry about it. You're good. See ya. Enjoy. This may not sound like a big deal because you're like, who listens to radio? But it is to a degree, because some of the bigger conservative voices, Glenn Beck, Mark Levin, Sean Hannity, and onward. Well, yes, I know, like Sean Hannity, that dude is probably secretly not conservative at all, but he likes to play conservative, but people listen to him. They are on that network. And George Soros is known for trying to infiltrate American culture, and he has been a huge proponent of internet censorship. He's been one of the people that want to push the idea of hate speech laws, and he was one of the people that were he was funding companies that were trying to force social media companies to censor during the 2022 midterms. And George Soros is also known for buying local judges, and he funds a lot of local campaigns, and he's a progressive through and through. Okay, you may ask, what's the big deal about the progressives? Well, the progressives are all about their centralized power. That's a huge part of what they're trying to do. So what they do is they sell you on these ideas of like, oh, we're gonna have equity and everybody's gonna be one big happy family, and like you need to relinquish control to us to take care of you. So what they want to do is, their end goals are, they want to have this equality of outcome. They want to expand the welfare state. They talk about things like social justice and finance redistribution, and they want to transform culture. That's why you see this thing of the more woke ideology coming about, and then on top of that you have the hate speech laws and things like that. That's a progressive policy. They talk about environmental controls and global governance, and the end goals of this whole thing are centralized power. They want to remember how what the hell's that guy's name? Oh, the world. I can't think of his name. I'm recovering from I think I had COVID or something, and I'm still just suffering from tremendous brain fog. Schwab, is it Klaus Schwab? So Klaus Schwab. Let me just make sure I'm saying that right. Yeah. So yeah, Klaus Schwab once said, "You will own nothing and you'll be happy." That's an end goal of progressivism. So they want to control you through dependency. That's why the welfare state is a big deal. They want you to depend on the government for everything. So it's in their best interest to crush smaller competition and focus on corporatism. They like to use identity politics to divide and conquer. They like the idea of censorship. They like to heavily regulate the economy and tax the crap out of you. And they want to get rid of your national sovereignty as a way to push globalism. And they'll tell you, this is for the betterment of humanity. And it's all about expanding control, getting rid of your freedom, and creating a more obedient society. They had their opportunity to do that, didn't they, during the pandemic? And they did get a lot of people to fall in line. That's a major component of what they're trying to do. So someone like George Soros having control over a major network of communication in the United States is very beneficial to him, because he is about all those things. It's and like that, this will tie into the next part of what I'm going to talk about here. But keep this in mind as I show you this. All right. This is from the Free Press. It's called Meet Kamala's Mega Donors. So a collection of philanthropists, Silicon Valley titans, Democratic mega donors are using their fortunes and influence to see VP Harris elected in November. They've donated tens of millions of dollars, routing it to the Harris campaign. They've done a lot of it just fundraising in general, but there's a super PAC called Future Forward, which has raised almost $200 million for her campaign, and it's the biggest PAC donor to her campaign. And so you have, you have Kamala Harris out there, with Kamala Harris out there smearing Trump as someone who is backed by billionaires. He wants to give his billionaire friends tax cuts and things like that. Well, Kamala Harris is supported by a lot of billionaires and a lot of ultra wealthy people. There's a reason why she has outraised Trump by almost $200 million. And most of that money, so when it comes to her committee or outside donations, her committee has done $500 million compared to Trump's, I think it was 200 for Trump. Whatever the numbers were, it was a huge gap. And it's just real funny to watch them rip, the wealthy and say that the rich need to pay their fair share and all this other stuff, when, look at this list. You got Reid Hoffman, so the LinkedIn founder. It's given $11.6 million to elect Harris in 2024. You got Michael Bloomberg has given over $19 million just to Future Forward altogether. The the Harris Victory Fund and the Harris for President. Fred Eichner, $27 million. Dustin Moskovitz, co-founder of Facebook, $3 million. James and Marilyn Simons, $9.1 million. George Soros, $60 million. Mark Heising and Liz Simons, $1.2 million. James and Catherine Murdoch, so the son of Rupert Murdoch, the Fox News guy, given $2 million. And onward. This is just a small chunk of the list. So you have this too. This is an article that came out yesterday or 2 days ago. Was it 21st? So yeah, it came out on Monday by Zero Hedge. And it's called "The Democratic Party's Big Government Machine Explained in Flowcharts." And there's an author named Tyler O'Neill who writes for the Daily Signal, who's coming out with a book in January, I believe. It's called It's called The Woktopus: Dark Money, Cabal Manipulating the Federal Government. And it shows flowcharts laying out the way money is distributed to the bureaucracy of our government. Very interesting. And they will use nonprofits as a way to channel money wherever they see fit. And that's how you get things like this is here: anti-Israel pressure, anti-fossil fuel activism, the weaponization of government, union propaganda, open borders. Then you have things like the Southern Poverty Law Center, and you have the founder. These donors give money to the SPLC, who then spreads that among the bureaucracy. And this is a list that goes, it's massive. You got the whole Green New Deal type thing. You got anti-Israel pressure campaign, human rights, the transgender administrative state, and how all this money will actually end up infiltrating different levels of the bureaucracy, and it can have an effect on policy. And that's because we have a fourth branch of government that can do whatever it wants, and we let it make laws, and people that are in there are unelected, can't do anything about them, but they have tremendous power. This all plays into that whole progressivist ideology. You would like, if you're a progressive, you would like to squash any competitors by hyper-regulating everything. It plays into support for corporations. Corporations are great allies to the progressives. So, when it comes to progressivism, so big government, they need big business. So it thrives through the growth of government programs, regulations, centralized control, and so in order to implement these policies, they need the logistical support and compliance of large corporations. Corporatism then enables this by fostering a partnership where big businesses help implement progressive policies, often to the detriment of small businesses and individual entrepreneurs. So you hear Kamala Harris talking about, I care about the middle class. We care about the middle class. That's what that whatever it was called, future, if my brain would work today. Future Forward. I went to their website and looked it over, and a lot of it's just like typical liberal talking points. And one of the big ones is, we need to help the middle class. Really? By donating PAC money to candidates that are actually going to, in the end, destroy the middle class. It's all just propaganda to get you to vote for their crappy policies and their crappy leadership. And so this heavy regulation, so you have these ultra rich donors giving money to nonprofits who then spread that money to whatever federal departments they see fit, getting meetings with them, paying lobbyists, whatever you can think of. They end up, pushing regulation in food and finance and healthcare and technology. And the thing with regulatory capture is the ultra rich, like the corporations who support Kamala Harris, they're the ones who can afford to take this on the chin. They are the ones who will be able to survive. You've seen earlier this election cycle, the LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman saying, "Well, yeah, I know she'll want to raise taxes for us rich, but it won't even really hurt me at all." And he's pushing her to, open up free trade and things like that. Which, I have no problem with free trade, but he's definitely trying to get in there, get some incentives thrown his way that will offset any pain he would feel from paying higher taxes. So the corporations also work hand in hand with progressives. You've seen this lately with the whole woke thing. So what happens is the corporations align with the government's, top-down policies, and they will they'll have an alignment of political power with the Democrats or the Uniparty. Then from there, they will, gain the favor of the regulators, and the corporations now have a more positive public image. Notice how Democrats now are all aboard when it comes to supporting, major corporations, which they never would have in the past. You see them supporting things like big pharma, big business. And through the progressivism, when it comes to dealing with corporations, there's a push for technocratic control. So big tech aligns closely with progressivism, and it creates a corporatist alliance that drives social policy, censorship, and information control. So they're progressives like the idea of regulating things like misinformation. They want to promote equity, implement climate measures. And big tech also likes to push for centralized data and control. Then you have things like ESG, stakeholder capitalism. These things help kind of engineer society with the way the progressives want. And as long as corporations comply, that benefits both parties. Corporations, they'll meet certain hiring practices or certain training practices. And they can squash any government or any major corporation that doesn't want to comply. And, the whole idea is, according to the progressives, we want to redistribute wealth, we want to help the middle class make their money back, and we want to help those that get left behind, and yada, yada, yada. But it overwhelmingly will just concentrate wealth in the hands of a smaller group of people. So there will be even more economic consolidation in the favor of the corporations. So in turn, it helps you get rid of your competition. The corporations will have direct access to policymaking and government subsidies. They'll be immune from, certain liabilities, especially when they hop on board with social agendas. And then they'll be able to enhance their public image and look like we're doing the right thing. Like, look at what happens, when it comes to most ESG policies in major corporations. They try to meet them in some way. So corporatism is the engine of progressivism. And it's this partnership between big government and big business that, their interests align. And the government can use corporations to get more compliance and more control. And corporations make more money and they get more protection. They'll push these things like justice and equality and things like that, right? But it's all just, it's fake. It's all they're all lying to you. It is pure manipulation. And I think that's it's just the most idiotic thing when you hear the Democrats talking about how they're the party of the middle class, they're the party of the lower classes, they want to help, those that are left behind, those who suffer from economic inequality. When in reality, they're just using the very same policies that they claim are going to help those left behind to just further the pressures on them. You're making it very difficult for anybody to survive in an economy like this. That's the point. They don't want your small business to survive. They want your small business to fail, and then you go work for some corporation. You go work for a corporation, hey, we'll stick you in our training program, or you'll have to abide by whatever ESG crap that we put out. If you don't like that, then go get another job somewhere else. But all the jobs you're going to go get, you're going to have to deal with the stuff there. So that's like, this is all tied together. So when I show you that list of all these ultra wealthy people supporting Kamala Harris, this is all tied together. It goes into George Soros buying radio stations. Like, there is a big picture here. And that big picture is one that shows the destruction of American sovereignty. Your right to free speech, your right to defend yourself, your liberty, all those things are under threat. And eventually, they want to get their way. I know I've harped on this a million times. But once you get hate speech laws and misinformation laws in the United States, you're doomed. It's over. You are handing over control solely to your government if you do that. You are showing a complete dependence on your government if you're willing to hand over your rights to free speech. Now, I know you could say, well, how can you say that I'm willingly handing it over to them when most of the time when people just get elected to office, they go and end up doing whatever they want anyways. They'll just vote in alignment with their party. Exactly is the problem, though. You need to get rid of people in office that are willing to comply with the party over the people that voted for them. So when you hear people like Biden or Harris or Hillary Clinton or any of these people talking about democracy, you know, he's a threat to our democracy. Our democracy, they have to harp on democracy all the time, as if democracy is the greatest thing about being an American. They're not talking about your freedom and your liberty and all these things. They're trying to pretend like, you know, your ability to choose two uniparty candidates, that's democracy. Anybody that's an outsider, that's not democracy. They're to threaten your democracy. They're the ones that are there to threaten your American institutions. But your American institutions, to them, it's not your constitutional rights. The American institutions to someone like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, that's the bureaucracy. That's the Federal Department of Education. These are things that like these are integral parts of your democracy. Like Joe Biden said the other day that Trump needs to be locked up. And he drew cheers from the crowd. He goes, politically. But he prefaced it with, well, Trump wants to get rid of the Federal Department of Education. Oh no. And because your Federal Department of Education is being influenced by wealthy donors, by corporations, by George Soros. They are infiltrating our society, and you don't even know it. This whole thing with you got things like DEA, the FDA, the CDC, I don't know, you name it, whatever three-letter organization you could think of, ATF, any major regulatory agency. Those were never intended to have any control whatsoever. When they were created, they were intended to do so, but there was nothing in our system when it started out that made room for that. That is the invention of progressivism. That is a Woodrow Wilson idea that has been built into our society now. He wanted that expert class. You know, it was his idea of a democracy was to have an expert class that could just, basically solve all of our problems. Government could govern, the expert class could just hand them whatever information was needed, and, the people could go about and do their, people could go out and just live their lives knowing the government had them covered. The government had all the answers. Well, it just became a way for corruption to make its way into politics. Now, I'm not saying there wasn't corruption before. Of course there was, but there is extreme levels of it now. And when I was growing up, I remember like in, my college years in my 20s, it just seemed like there's no corruption. Like you just don't ever see that in America. And it's like, oh no, we've all been exposed to it now. And I think that's just because, it was always there. But as technology became more prevalent and people had the wider capability to communicate with each other through the internet, they became so desperate that they just showed their hand, and they showed how corrupt they are. They showed how much overreach there is in government, because they have to in order to survive. Like, that's their survival instinct. So it's, whenever you hear people talking about, well, Trump supports the rich and the wealthy need to pay their fair share, and it's like, in the end, the wealthy paying their fair share does not mean the billionaires. It's the billionaires are going to be fine. They say it's people that make like $400,000 a year or more need to pay their fair share. And it's like, okay, well, the people like that are going to be far more affected by higher tax rates than a billionaire is, right? And so the billionaires that support them, it's like they're not really that scared about higher tax rates. It's, you know, maybe you're millionaires, or maybe the people that are making over $500,000 a year, you know, like, they would like to put the pressures on these people. And we have a huge problem in this country with overregulation. The regulatory capture is destroying your ability to ever run a small business in anything. You know, if you if you want to be a commercial fisherman, or you want to be a farmer, or you want to, you know, whatever it is, good luck, because you got to deal with bureaucrats all the time. I used to work in pet supplies industry. I was a manager of pet supplies stores, and it's a notification. U.S. has evidence North Korean troops are in Russia. Whoa. I was a manager at pet supply stores, and I worked as a district manager, and I did all sorts of things in that for a while. And smaller dog and cat food companies were, the government tried to squash a lot of these. And like, as stupid as it sounds, there is big dog food and there is big cat food. There are major companies, like 3 of them, that used to be the only real options on the market. And then people wanted healthier options. And then those other those other organizations were like, well, those corporations were like, well, you can't. What are we gonna? We got to get rid of all the byproducts and all the other garbage somehow. We've been feeding them to your pets. And so some of those smaller companies, they started to feel the pressure of the government, especially raw pet food companies. Oh, I mean, they want to make it impossible for you to do what you do. You know why? Because if you feed a raw pet food, it's going to basically work miracles in your pet, and you will never want to buy burnt, extruded, crappy kibble ever again. They can't have that. They want your dog to eat a food that's going to make them smell gross and have itchy skin and smelly ears and all this other stuff. Because if you feed them a raw food, well, you're going to see all those problems probably go away. Well, then nobody will want to buy our stuff. And then if word gets out that that stuff is actually better, nobody's going to want to do that. They did this whole thing with, back when I was working, they came out with a study about grain-free dog food causing dilated cardiomyopathy in dogs. It was not a study. It was an opinion piece, but that thing went through the pet industry like wildfire. And the study was completely bogus. And there was it was like a small sample of pets, and the idea was like, oh, the grain free is making your dog's heart enlarged. And it was like a golden retrievers were having DCM, and they were like, oh, it's the grain free food. And this has been basically debunked. But vets roll with that now a lot of times. They'll give you a pamphlet if you walk into your vet office. If you're feeding grain-free food, they'll be like, oh, you're feeding grain-free. That's the problem here. Take this. And it's that study. It's not even a study. I keep calling it a study. It's that article. And it's really And they did that to destroy the smaller companies. Because guess what? There are 3 companies on the market that own, terrible brands of dog food and cat food, who have been clinically studied like 100 years. They forever ago, they were like, they've done scientific studies to ensure that they meet the necessary nutritional criteria. And even though the stuff that goes in those foods are total garbage, since they're the only ones that people know that have been studied, as they say, they end up, the vets and stuff a lot of times will only recommend those, even though they're terrible for your pet. Because unfortunately, kibble in general is not good for your pet. But that's the type of thing I'm talking about. They can crush intermediate, smaller companies that way. Through regulation. They can bully them out of business. So, all right, well, I'm going to cut this video here. Please like and subscribe and share and comment and all that good stuff. Follow me on social. I am sorry if I seem like I'm kind of all over the place or struggling to put my thoughts together. Whatever recent illness I've had, it's like leaving me with the worst brain fog ever. This morning I was trying to write and just sitting here like, I can't even think of words. So I don't know if you were watching my videos, but I was sick for, 2 weeks maybe. And ever since, I've just been really struggling to kind of get back into it cognitively. It's really driving me crazy. I feel like Joe Biden right now. But I'm hoping that my brain will come back soon. But in the meantime, please like, subscribe, share, comment, all the good things. And if you're listening to the podcast version, please leave me a review if you could. And hope to continue to grow. I'm working on a podcast for a Civil War medicine podcast. I am a historian. I have my PhD and master's are in history, and I studied Civil War medicine as a specialty. So I'm doing a podcast on that in the next couple of weeks. I am currently working on. So if that sounds interesting to you, check it out. In the meantime, I will be back with you. Probably not tomorrow, but I'll be back with you on Friday. All right, bye.